Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Creation Myths. I'm really excited for tonight's show. We got a really fun one. This will cause eyes to roll. I guarantee you. Uh, this article, I read it and I had to do a show on it. And I'm thrilled to have two perfect guests with me tonight to talk about the article that we are going to talk about. So, joining me tonight, I'm really excited. We've got RJ Downard and Dr. Joel Duff. RJ, take a second, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll throw it to Joel.
Old retiree, now in the researching evolution stuff, written books, and have a direct connection to Bill Dembski, which we will be going into in the course of things.
Yeah, and wrote specifically a fantastic book that everybody should check out called The Rocks Were There, co-authored with our friend Jackson Wheat. And it's fantastic. It's a wonderful reference, covers all your bases for your anti-creationist needs. I can't recommend that book enough. And I will tell everybody that I use that book as like my go-to geology reference for this stuff because it's really accessible for someone who doesn't know the geology of this stuff. So I love that book. And actually we have a chat here that I want to highlight real fast. Wait, RJ writes books? I don't know if that's sarcastic or not, but if it's
was
not,
sarcastic. I think DM is one of my patrons on my show, so he's got an axe to grind.
There we go. So you have written at least one other evolution book, though. Yes, tell us about
Evolution Slam Dunk.
There we go.
That's where I actually go into the story about Ann Coulter and Bill Dembski in that book.
So we're going to hear that story in just a little bit. Before we get into it with our friend William Dembski, Dr. Joel Duff, it has been way too long since we've had a chance to hang out. So welcome back. Tell everybody who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm Dr. Duff, and I'm really thrilled to be here. It's always a fun time, and I'm a professor at the University of Akron. Not retired yet, so I can't spend all of my time doing this. So it's a fun sort of like side hobby that is a little more than a side hobby if you follow me. So I have a blog, Naturality
You're damn good
Historia,
at it.
and I've got a YouTube channel, Dr. Joel Duff, where I pontificate on all things Ken Ham and creationism and I guess I should point out that I'm a Christian in scientist, and so I'm taking sort of a theistic perspective, so looking at science and faith. So that's a little bit different, but it is what it is. And I thank you for having me on here.
Oh, you are very welcome. Thank you for coming on. I want to remind everybody that both of these channels are linked down below in the description. Everybody needs to hit those subscribe buttons right now. Do not walk, run. If you are not subscribed to RJ and Joel, make sure you subscribe to those channels. I will tell you they are fantastic resources. If you like what I do, you will like what they do. Please subscribe to RJ and Joel. Okay, so let's talk about our topic for tonight, because I have been having a bit of a tiff with Discovery Institute for the last couple of months. And that has resulted in me just like perusing their blog more frequently than I was in the recent past, because and Joel, you know this as well as anybody, because it's kind of your thing to like keep up on what the major creationist organizations are doing. You know that the intelligent design people have really kind of fallen by the wayside compared to their heyday of like, the early 2000s. And so it's just not something that I was paying a whole lot of attention to. But they had this piece pop up by Dr. William Dembski, who is one of the grandfathers of the modern intelligent design movement. So this struck me as really interesting because Dembski resigned from the intelligent design movement in 2016, and not like just kind of fades away as people do on the internet. Oh, whatever happened to Dembski? Oh yeah, he doesn't really post anymore. Like, he did this whole big thing where he was like, I am out. I am resigning. I'm not doing this anymore. So now he comes back. That was 2016. Now, what do I notice? I guess it was last week or the week before on the Evolution News blog for Discovery Institute. I see a William Dembski byline, and I'm confused. I'm like, what year is it? Is it 2007 again? When did Bill Dembski come back? So I had to read this, and it was bananas. So I just had to talk about it, and I think these two guests are the perfect people to do this because both of them have this just wonderful expertise in like the history of all these groups and all these people and how they all kind of work together and what their deals are and the different flavors of creationism that they represent. So we're going to talk about this piece tonight. It's called Darwin Devotion Detector. Take the Test Now by William A. Dembski. And basically the way this works is it's 40 questions where you have two options. You have the evolutionist option and you have the correct option. And when I tell you there is egregious straw manning and false dichotomying going on here, that doesn't even scratch the surface of how off the walls this thing is. So,
You ain't
like,
exaggerating.
this is like, folks, sometimes when we do stuff, we talk about serious science stuff. Tonight is not one of those nights. This is going to be a repeatedly pick your jaw up off whatever thing is in front of you kind of stream. So we're going to have fun with this. And also we'll talk a little bit, obviously about the nuts and bolts, like where these crazy ideas are coming from tonight. So with all of that kind of introductory spiel, let's get into this silliness tonight. So here we go. When I saved it as a PDF, the formatting got weird. So the formatting is not great, but whatever. So basically the thing here is a test that Dembski wrote years ago, this Darwin Devotion Detector, where it has 40 pairs of statements and you select which one is closer to your position. Spoiler, they're nowhere near my position for like most of them. It's completely off the wall. But the correct Darwinian answer, I love this phrase, the correct Darwinian answer is marked with a hash sign, and it should take only a few minutes. So a high score means you are, worshipping at the altar of Darwin, and a low score means you have escaped the Darwinian indoctrination.
Outside Darwin's thrall.
There you go. So the way we're going to format this, everybody, is we're just going to go through this and we're going to read the statements and react to the statements and talk about them. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on any one of them. We're not going to be here for 2 hours, but we're just going to go through them and
there's not enough science there to spend a lot of time on them.
What the heck is going on? So let's do it. Enough preamble. Let's get into this. So number one, should I read them all out loud? I guess I'll read them all out loud.
First couple.
Yeah. All right. We'll do it. All right. Number one, evolution in the sense that all present-day organisms arose from one or a few ancestors, common descent, is now a proven fact. Evolution in that sense is still an unproven hypothesis. Who wants to start?
Gosh, no.
What have you been doing
But
here?
this one is one of the rare examples on the list that actually relates to kind of a core evolutionary thing, which is a natural branching, common descent, common ancestry, which is a core concept. But the idea that it ain't proven, well, golly gosh, that's wrong. Because we have a ton of evidence from paleontology and developmental biology and genetics. It is just amazingly well done. Take it away, Joel.
Don't throw it to me. I do feel like they have certain definitions of terms, and they know their audience. They know their audience doesn't really have an understanding of what proof means. So I don't like the phrasing of this question because of the word proof. If you use sort of a technical definition of that, we're not really proving things in science. And so right off the get-go, it's like it's a bad question, right? It's just not well described. So
I'll point out
it puts you in a hard position choosing.
I mean,
I know of only like 2 or 3 intelligent designers that will kind of sort of accept aspects of common ancestry, which is Michael Denton, Michael Behe, and Gunter Beckley, kind of sort of.
Yeah,
when push comes to shove, do they have examples of common ancestry? Not really. But all the rest, which would include Dembski and Steve Meyer and Jonathan Wells and all that, absolutely categorically refuse to accept common ancestry, especially for us humans. And keep that in mind in our quizzes to come.
Yeah. I mean, the obvious thing that's missing here is something that I talk about in like the first couple weeks of my intro class every fall, which is theory. What does theory mean, right? It's more than a fact because it's explanatory rather than descriptive. It's more than a hypothesis because it's not a proposed idea. It's an idea with lots of, right? It's a theory. And we're just leaving this out. And like Dembski, for all his flaws, like Dembski's a smart guy. He knows what the word theory means. He knows this is BS. Like, and one of the things that jumped out to me going through all this is like just the open, like disregard for the truth, like just being accurate, just no desire to do anything
it's going to
resembling
get
good
really
faith.
bad as we go down through this.
So let's look at number 2. The theory of natural selection, i.e. retention of chance variations, adequately explains common descent. Or, even assuming full-blown evolution to be a fact, the theory of natural selection does not adequately explain it. And I'm just going to just right off the bat with this one, like there's more to evolution than natural selection and mutation. And Dembski knows that.
This is the descent from Darwin. This is the whole premise of the descent from Darwin question. Is natural selection the only explanation for everything? Yes or no? That's the thing that they've been pushing all of that time with their 1,100 PhDs and that. But of course, no, there's sexual selection, and then there's a whole bunch of factors of of genetic drift and all of that plays a role in there. So it was possible even for a couple evolutionists to be signing that descent from Darwin, not recognizing it as a deck stack. And it can embrace people because John Baumgartner is a signatory and all the rest. And they continue to push this all the way down the line. But we are now in this gradual deck stack of bringing in the intelligent design mantras from the Discovery Institute as the only perception of reality.
Natural selection isn't even...
You're good. You're still here. Don't say uh-oh. You're still good.
Oh.
Yep.
I just don't hear RJ anymore.
That could be a benefit.
I'm looking at the wrong screen. That's the problem. Natural selection is not the theory of common descent either. This isn't a description of natural selection. And this whole thing is, like you said, Dan, it's an oversimplification. All these questions can be oversimplifications. But let's go right back to the very beginning. This is the Darwinism detector, right? So everything is framed in the sense of like, we're going back to what Darwin thought and Darwin's idea. And of course, they're equating Darwin with natural selection. That is the whole and totality of evolution. And we're going to see a number of questions that speak to Darwinism versus the theory of evolution.
Right.
And so it's stacking the deck to, poison the well in terms of the answers that he wants his audience to see. This isn't a questionnaire for evolutionary biologists and so forth to take. This is a questionnaire for those who don't know anything about evolution to read through these and go like, oh, that's what evolutionists believe. Well, this is what I believe. Oh, all right. I took the detector. Therefore, I'm not an evolutionist. And I can see how wrong they are.
I got a 2 out of 40.
Yeah. Casey Luskin would pass with flying colors.
And also, just one small thing that Zach, pointed out here, that's not the definition of natural selection.
Yeah.
Because that phrase also describes genetic drift. That's not what that is. Number 3, natural selection accounts for the phenomenon of adaptation and thus the appearance of design in organisms. Or, for an organism to be selected, it must already be well adapted. Therefore, the theory of natural selection begs the question of the origin of adaptations or design.
Is this like a fitness issue, Dan?
What the hell, man? I
mean, you have to be somewhat adapted to your environment to even be alive. So, of course, you're going to be adapted. Yeah. And then selection continues to work on that to improve under new challenges.
I think this is the classic, like, oh, well, natural selection can't create anything. It can only select from what's already present. But there are other mechanisms that generate the variation, and then natural selection can act on that variation. And like,
it's kind of cheeky of him to bring up begs the question in a thing, because that's all of what he's doing in his quiz.
Number 4. Oh, I love this one. I love this one
Yeah.
so much because this is I will say I love when a creationist says the phrase survival of the fittest because I don't think I have ever encountered a creationist using the phrase correctly. Ever. So the formula, survival of the fittest, amounts to survival of the survivors, suggesting that the theory of natural selection is empirically empty or even a tautology. Or survival of the fittest is a useful shorthand formula for characterizing the theory of natural selection. I'm just gonna rant on this one for a second because
Go for it.
when the phrase "survival of the fittest" was coined, it was Herbert Spencer, 1860 something, and Darwin then subsequently adopted it for his own use. The word that is left out, it's survival of the fittest traits. It's referring to the persistence of traits within a population. It's not referring to the survival of individual organisms in that population. It's referring to the persistence of traits. And anytime a creationist brings this up, survival of the fittest, it's a tautology because it's survival of those most likely to survive. You have not done even like the baseline amount of like Googling that phrase. You didn't even read the Wikipedia page on that phrase to understand what it actually means. Creationist, Google it. Read the Wikipedia page before making
it was
the
Herbert
argument,
Spencer
please.
who came up with the phrase, and then Alfred Wallace said, "Hey, this sounds cool. Let's kind of use it."
Anyone else want to piggyback off that rant? Should we keep going?
It's more of the deck stack. But boy, we're going to get into the mud here shortly.
I hate it so much. All right. Charles Darwin is an important figure in the history of science. The conceptual importance of natural selection has been exaggerated. Natural selection is one of the greatest ideas ever, and conceiving of it put Darwin in the company of Newton and Einstein. Uh-oh, we lost Joel. Joel, come back.
Oh, come back. Yeah. This is that dichotomous
Joel will be
thing.
back in a minute.
I have no problem with regarding Darwin as one of the major scientists, and it has epochal transformations in biology. Obviously, Darwin had very little effect on cosmology and the development of black holes, so it's not an issue that relates to all of that. But the fact that it's all so Darwin centered, as if nothing happened after 1882.
Yeah, we're still stuck in this Darwinian box. We jumped inside the box and we never came out of the box. And for what it's worth, this is one of the few where I am happy to at least a little bit agree with the evolutionist statement, because I do think that the concept of natural selection paired with universal common descent, I do think that was an advance in our understanding of the natural world, on par with the contributions of Newton and Einstein. So at least that second half, I agree with that second half of that sentence. I actually agree with that.
It totally revolutionized plant biology. That prior to Darwin, plant biology was just looking at little things and drawing the pictures and making little observations about them, and none of it ever made any sense. And that's why even theistic evolutionists of the period moved on to the Darwinian structure, because suddenly treating them as lineages made sense. and they never stopped looking back on the subject, even though they weren't entirely sure about the natural selection aspect of it, which was in eclipse in that kind of neo-Lamarckianism that was particularly favored by a lot of American evolutionists from like 1900 on to really the neo-Darwinian synthesis that hit like a ton of bricks, in the 20s and 30s. But all of that stuff, and we know from their various writings, all the gang at the Discovery Institute knows that history.
Oh, of course they do.
Boy, they just don't go out of their way to call attention to it, and certainly not in this silly little thing. Now we get to the next question.
I love this one. Before we get to this one, I just want to show this comment because I think this is spot on. This quiz is clearly intended to feed creationists straw men of what evolution understanders think. Yeah, that's 100% correct. Like, this is intended for a creationist audience to reinforce their preconceived notions with straw man after straw man
and their obsessions.
Spot on.
Because as we get farther down in that list of the culture camp topics, holy smokes, is this telling you way more about Dembski's worldview than it is about Charles Darwin's?
Sure is. All right. So, along those lines, let's look at this one. Darwin's birthday falls on the same day as Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, 1809. If Americans were to celebrate one or the other, we should celebrate Darwin Day. Versus Lincoln's impact on the US and the world has been far more positive. We should continue to celebrate Lincoln's birthday. Like, you could do both. Why do we have to
Yeah,
pick?
he doesn't allow there to be a both. I think it's
You
a
could
wonderful time to it. By the way,
just do both.
Lincoln had Darwin's books on his bookshelf and
Nice.
was going to be stuff that he would be reading because he was quite a science geek, the only president that's ever had a patent. And he would be presumably have been studying a lot of that stuff during his retirement after his second term as president, had that bullet at Ford's Theater not gotten in the way.
Based Abraham Lincoln, reading Charles Darwin over here.
Yeah.
Also, you know what? Like Lincoln, why would that be in conflict? Like Lincoln did a lot of good things, and we should celebrate Lincoln. I don't know what the problem is. All right, Darwinism. Suitably updated is good 21st century science. Darwinism is a relic of 19th century science. Darwin's work has now been largely superseded. Like this is one of the few I think where I was like kind of all of the above, maybe a little bit.
Superseded in the sense that we have a whole bunch of other factors, not superseded in the general notion of common ancestry and the importance of natural selection.
Right. Yeah. And it's fair. I don't know why this is even a thing. All right. Number 8, Darwin shared many of the conventional opinions of his day, including the superiority of the white race. Versus Darwin embodies humanity at its best and deserves the status of secular saint.
Whoa. Holy moly.
What? Like, what?
This is, now we're knee deep in the Richard Weikert Darwin hate club. Darwinism equal racism equal all of that. And this is a thing that is absolutely a pathology of Discovery Institute. Joel's back. Yeah, we were now into Darwinian racism.
Now, to be clear,
question number 7.
To be clear, like Darwin was a racist. Like he was straight up like Darwin was a racist,
but not much by 19th century standards.
By the standards of the time, he was actually quite progressive on race, right? Oh, yeah. By modern standards, he was a terrible racist. By the standards of the day,
my favorite example concerns the fact that he was taught taxonomy or taxidermy by an ex-slave. And his reaction to that was he regarded him as a very intelligent man, that individually he did not have an eye-twitchy reaction. You have a little bit more of the conventional racism in a Huxley, but none of that is even like on the meter compared to the reaction of Louis Agassiz, who is a noted anti-evolutionist of the period, in addition to developing the idea of ice ages. And Agassiz reflects the actual benchmark level of racism in the 19th century. When he came over from Switzerland to teach at Harvard in the 1840s, I think, this was literally the first time he'd ever seen Black people. And he wrote back to Mama in an apoplectic letter where he was going at the people that were serving me at the restaurant, and I had to see their hideous hands. I mean, you're going, whoa, okay. You know, that when you look at him and Gobineau and the various other racists that were current in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s and all of that, you know, Darwin's bunch ain't showing up on the scope, and they are in the anti-slavery camp, the Wedgwood Circle, and that had an egalitarianism that is less racist by orders of magnitude than the genuine racists of the period. So we'll be calling attention to this in volume 2 of Rocks Were There, because this whole Darwin racism thing, Jerry Bergman over in Creationism Land and that, he's been banging this drum for years, and we can't resist calling attention to it and raking it over the coals.
When I was when I was an undergrad, I had a formal debate about evolution with some people on campus, and this came up during the Q&A, and my answer was something like, "Oh yeah, Darwin was a terrible racist. They all were. They were all racist. Like we can accept that they were awful racists with reactionary views on race by modern standards.
Yeah.
and also accept the validity of the underlying scientific ideas while also
Yeah, it's irrelevant.
repudiating the legacy of those
Mhm.
ideas in things like eugenics, right? All these ideas can coexist together. And like, I wish Joel's mic was working, because I just want to ask Joel, and Joel, you can just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you can hear me. Just a simple question. Do you consider Darwin a secular saint, sir? Like, what?
I'll add even that there's some historical
Muted.
new work in the last couple of years that have even been calling it into question the traditional trope about Darwin being an anti-feminist misogynist. Because it turns out when you look at how he is treating actual women trying to come into the scientific field and doing research in the area, by the 19th century standards, he was pretty liberal and tolerant. He often resorted to the usual male harumph-harumphs in a lot of the public writing, because that was what was kind of expected for people to do. So in some respects, it's in the same ballpark that you see with Richard Dawkins and Jerry Coyne today about the whole issue of trans and gender identity, you know, as
RJ,
to where, you know, you've got
we don't have an hour for me to rant about these.
Oh, yeah, okay. Move on to the next question.
Don't get me started. Like, so many people that I thought had properly functioning brains have lost their minds. I'm not even going to start. I'm not even going to do it, because we'll be here all night. I'm not going to do it.
What
We do a show on it sometime,
am I back finally?
Oh, you're back. Yes,
we're up to number 9.
I managed to have a mandated update on my computer that just wouldn't let me do anything until I did that.
You are
been there, done that.
Right now. All right.
I mean, it always happens in the classroom, so why not here too? You know,
Darwin's ideas and their unintended consequences have done great harm. The world would be a better place if everyone had to learn about Darwin's ideas. Like, yeah, both. Like, yes.
Yes.
They're in full culture camp mode on this one.
Like, I would love it if everybody understood how basic evolutionary principles worked, because then people would have a better understanding of viruses and vaccines and all sorts of public health things. And also, we can recognize that, like, evolutionary theory was the basis for eugenics and stuff, and we can hold those two thoughts together, because, like, such is life. Things can be complicated, and that's okay. Discovery Institute.
This is their first big full-out double standard question, because at no point does anybody at the Discovery Institute ever ponder, even for a microsecond, the unintended consequences of their own worldview on anything.
Yeah, never.
And there are a lot of them, including their anti-vaxxer side and their anti-climate research side. They've got stuff up the yin-yang within their own house.
Oh, yeah. Okay, number 10. This is where we're even going further down this culture war rabbit hole with this one. Hostility towards evolution is a major factor in the decline of American educational standards in relation to international standards, versus other factors such as classroom disorder and, here's the giveaway, the breakdown of the family, have contributed more to the decline of American educational standards than hostility towards evolution. This is where, I'll let you two comment. But
you want to jump in first, or I have certainly something to say.
Hit it, Joel. I'm tossing it to Joel
go
first.
Ahead,
Take it.
Let me collect
well, you can react to the kind of, because for me, I'm immediately thinking about, is the Discovery Institute living in a cave? Are they unaware of what actually is going on in the efforts in schools on these kinds of culture camp issues that are directly related to Christian extremism? They're directly related to young earth creationist propaganda. They're related to a whole baggage of prejudices. And the idea that this is some rarefied concept of a Darwinian naturalism versus some... No, they are bypassing really serious issues about the politicization of the educational system and the religiousification of the educational system that just gets my blood boiling.
100%.
I don't think you have to go too far back in history. I mean, you go back into the 1920s and so forth. These are the same types of things that have been said over and over and over again. Under different conditions at different times. This isn't just about evolution and resistance to evolution that has led to, all these other consequences in society.
Yeah, and the thing I want to point out here is that this is the first point where they really clearly give up the game here. Oh, and now we lost RJ. What is happening, folks? So, oh wait, he's back. We're good.
Yep.
All right, this is the phrase here. The breakdown of the family is where they really give up the game in terms of like what
Yeah.
this is, in terms of actually being a conservative political project rather than a scientific endeavor. Right. This is a project of Christian nationalism and social conservatism and imposing like traditional family values, meaning traditional gender roles, traditional family structures on the rest of the country, right? This phrase is a dog whistle to that audience. So they read this and go, I see what you're doing here. I'm on board, right? That's what this is.
Big time.
Right. We are a quarter of the way through, folks. We are doing great. We are on track, sort of schedule wise. So let's keep going.
Shoe drop number 2, number 11.
Public school teachers in the U.S. should be free to teach what they can defend to be true based on evidence. Public school biology teachers should be required to teach the received views of professional evolutionary biologists.
Well, I also think that teachers should be, teaching the received views of, basic chemistry and chemical laws and of, U.S. history and a bunch of other things.
Geography.
I mean, this raises questions about who decides what we should teach. And the simplest way to go about doing things is there's a body of knowledge that most experts agree upon. And that's the thing that you need to at least be familiar with. I'm not saying you necessarily have to agree with all that, but you at least need to have knowledge of what we as a community, as a society, have discovered and uncovered, and our common communication devices, right? The things that we have in common to talk about. And that's, what if you left every teacher to decide what it is that they thought, was scientifically accurate? Then you get into the questions about vaccines and germ theory and whatever it is that was my upbringing or my personal experience suddenly becomes the science that I'm teaching, but that isn't science. It just isn't.
Yeah, and there has been a long tradition in the Discovery Institute, including especially Casey Luskin, to sucking up to examples of teachers who are.
Just throw in here that my kids go to a Christian school, and they actually use a secular textbook for teaching their science classes, right? It's not specifically like a Christian, wraparound answers in Genesis book. So they learn all the theories and so forth. Now, I'll admit that they sort of, will have a little unit or something like that about what they might think is wrong or have a different perspective or think that but they also believe that it's important that what do people believe? What is the standard or common or accepted definitions and theories that are out there. And I appreciate that.
The vast majority.
You need to know that. Otherwise, you're just living in a silo and you're not able to, develop any critical thinking skills at all.
Yeah. The vast majority of the cases where high school teachers in particular.
So what do you think, Dan? Think we should just let
trouble.
teachers do what they want? I mean, that's what you do in your class, right?
Oh yeah. I know my goal.
And it's like, I'm using this textbook, but you know what? I'm just going off and going to say it's all wrong.
I mean, my job fundamentally, because I teach intro bio and evolutionary bio, my job basically is to indoctrinate the youth so that they get a 40 out of 40 on this quiz. If in fact,
test.
In fact, my next class, I got, tomorrow was my last day of my one summer class, and I got a 2-week break. And you know what? This is going to be my final exam for my second class. I'm going to teach to the test. I will say with this that Joel, you hit on something really important, that if you don't give students a kind of accurate representation of what the consensus is in the field, then you're really cutting them off at the knees in terms of being able to function outside of your silo going forward. And I will say, for that problem with a creationist, kind of anti-science education, that is the point, right? Because one of the goals is to keep people in. And so that is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. You and I both talked about that a lot, right? That's the whole gambit of young Earth creationism, is to
Yep.
prevent
and the
you from
intelligent
being able to
design
even
movement.
think about what the other side. You teach them what they think, and
Right.
that becomes
Bo-
your knowledge. And going back to your
Both of
general
those
education
have
class, you have a responsibility to the other faculty who are teaching other classes to
Yep.
teach them these core elements so that they will be able to, build upon them. And certainly every high school teacher needs to at least give students a basic understanding of what people out there believe and what they're going to, as you said, what are they going to find out when they go to college?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing, and you just maybe kind of remind me of something else, and this is why these things take forever. Uh,
Yeah.
is you just reminded me, Joel, of Patricia Angler. Which Patricia Angler, was that the
yes.
book from the recent book from Answers in Genesis, Prepare to Thrive, right? And I
Right.
read that book, and the descriptions of
I
a
couldn't bring myself to read that book.
Oh, I read that book, and the descriptions of like a college biology class that she described bear no resemblance to what an actual college science class looks like. It's just complete fan fiction. And again,
Yeah.
that
And
is
make
on
no
purpose.
mistake about it, that's the curriculum that the
I'm
young Earth
not surprised at
creationists
all.
want in the field, in the same
Right.
way
And
that the intelligent
she's
design
creating that
curriculum that
perception of,
Casey
well,
Luskin
that's
has
a
done.
scare tactic to say, like, don't send your kids to public school, public college. Send
Yes.
them to Cedarville or some other safe place where they're going to continue to be fed the same information that you've already gotten so far.
And RJ, finish that thought, and then we're going to go to the next one because the
Yeah,
next one is great.
that Luskin as well is has a whole curriculum study that they've tried to get in. I've seen some of the
RJ's back.
material
I
that
don't see
people
him.
talking about.
Oh, you don't see
Yeah, that
RJ
they
back?
would like to have in schools.
Joel, RJ's back. Do you see him? Can
Yeah,
you hear him?
I'm here.
I can hear and see you, RJ.
Okay, which may or
Joel,
may
can you
not be
see
a plus.
RJ?
Nope, can't see him or hear him.
Oh my! Signal's coming in at least okay from my end. I'm not
Sorry,
muted,
RJ, if I'm
and the
talking over
camera's
you.
running. Okay.
Okay.
Oh no problem.
What I'll do is I will specifically call on you so we make sure we're good here.
I'm the master of talking over people, so I cannot claim anything on that.
Gentlemen, we're never gonna finish this. Number 12. All right. Kitzmiller v. Dover, Judge Jones ruled it's illegal to, quote, disparage or denigrate Darwinism, notably not in the quotes, in public schools. Judge Jones decided this case correctly. Versus by suppressing dissent and creating a state-imposed ideology in America. It was actually just the Central District of Pennsylvania, but like whatever. Judge Jones's ruling parallels Lysenkoism in the Soviet Union. I am going to throw my computer out the window.
This is a total misrepresentation of the Kitzmiller case, where ironically, both sides of the litigants asked Jones to rule on the scientific credibility of intelligent design, and he did, based on what he could see in court and the fact that he'd been lied to by the creationists who were trying to slip a Pandas and People, which is just a screed of a book, into the science realm. And there has been a long pile of posts, largely by Casey Luskin, dumping on Judge Jones at the Discovery Institute. And if there's something that you really want to get your blood to boil, read that stuff, because it is just blatantly misrepresenting the facts of the case.
So two things. First, Joel, can you see/hear RJ?
Nope.
Okay,
yeah,
hang on.
flying blind. Sorry, it's got to be my.
Hang on one second. Hang on.
Restart.
We're gonna. Okay.
Yeah, restart me.
All right. Can everybody see everybody else?
I can see everybody. Can you hear me, Joel?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Joel, would you mind leaving and coming back and seeing if that kind of kicks in somehow? Because
sure.
Now I can't even. There you go.
Yeah, just continue. I'll be back.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
Okay.
So Kitzmiller v. Dover was an extremely narrow. I mean, there were two aspects to it, right? One, it was that the school violated the Dover area school district violated the First Amendment by trying to get the intelligent design stuff into the classroom, that 3-paragraph statement. And then the second part was intelligent design writ large is just creationism under a new name, right? Those are the two components to that ruling. It's not illegal, according to that decision. Hi, Joel.
Okay, we're good.
Now can you hear?
Yes.
There
Yay!
we go. All right. It's not that decision didn't make it illegal in America to like denigrate Darwinism. Trust me, plenty of teachers do that. It just said in the Central District of Pennsylvania, you can't teach intelligent design because that's a First Amendment violation, and
not a scientific theory.
Right, and that case was never appealed because the Board of Ed lost their elections. They were replaced by people who opposed the teaching of intelligent design. So it never it's a fairly small scale thing. It never went higher than that.
Dembski was one of those who bugged out of actually doing stuff at Kitzmiller, along with Steve Meyer, as their lawyers were starting to have conniption fits that they were burrowing into an area that they didn't want to go. And the only one who went where angels fear to tread was Michael Behe, to his hilarious.
And how did that go?
Not well.
All right. Number 13, Darwin's theory of evolution is well supported scientifically as Einstein's theory of general relativity. Putting Darwin's theory of evolution in the same league as Einstein's theory of general relativity is an affront to the, I love this phrase, exact sciences. The exact sciences. It's even better than the historical versus operational science that you get. The exact sciences. I'm just going to speak for the panel on this one. The first one is one of the rare unambiguously correct statements here. Like, yes, evolution is as robust a theory as relativity. Like, I don't even know why this is a controversy.
We're in the paleogenomics era, gang.
Here we are. All right.
Move on.
The Darwin Awards given to people who kill themselves due to rash or foolish actions reflects an unhealthy cynicism and low view of humanity. The Darwin Awards rightly recognize individuals for contributing to human evolution by weeding themselves out of the gene pool through their stupidity. Does this man know what satire is?
No.
Like, is that
this
thing?
Is this man put himself up for a Darwin Award? Is that what's going on here?
I don't know. It's like
well, Dembski is only one notch shy of Henry Moore's creationism, so I'm just gonna show this comment because this is sorry, not that one. It shifted as I hit it. Hang on. There it is. It's literally a joke.
Yeah.
It's literally a joke. Dembski.
And I don't think anybody who would wave a Darwin Award takes pleasure in these doofuses who, you just kind of go, oh, dear me, oh my.
The eugenics movement led to mass sterilization of people deemed defective in the United States, and mass murder in Germany was largely based on Darwin's ideas. To lay the eugenics movement at Darwin's feet is grossly unfair. Yes, and yet, it's not Darwin's fault personally, but yes, people misused his ideas, and that led to eugenics.
Eugenics comes from a hereditarian view of things, and that predated Darwin and continued on through all of that. And it is no coincidence that some of the most extremist wings in the eugenics movement were not really Darwinists and were being criticized by a lot of the English geneticists that were coming along in the 1930s. And if we want frosting on the cake, one of the founders of the creationism movement, Mr. Tinkle, was a Christian creationist eugenicist.
So yeah, and as Zach says here, this is a good point. This is a nuanced topic that cannot be dealt with in 30 seconds. Yeah. There's a long history of this.
I was going to say there's blame to be spread all around. So let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. Living things are a collection of ordinary chemical elements organized in particular ways. There is nothing physically distinctive about life versus the living state of matter is physically distinctive, implying the existence of special causal powers that inorganic systems do not possess. Take it away, somebody.
Special causal powers? Footnote needed?
What does that even mean? What are we talking about here?
What does physically distinctive mean?
Yeah.
Organized?
I
guess it's irreducibly complex or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
The causal power, Dembski is quite clear in some of his apologetics writing. He's absolutely certain the designer is Jesus Christ. No ifs, ands, or buts, period. Let's move on.
Yeah, he's extraordinarily upfront about that, as RJ and I were talking about before we were on air in a Touchstone article from 1999, where
but not elsewhere.
No, it was only in that one magazine where he spoke the truth. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's number one. I just talked today in class about why when your friends, and everyone's experienced this, when your friend gets into a new relationship and then they're really annoying for like 2 months. Yeah, that's just like chemical stuff going on in their brain. They're just addicted to the other person. Like that's what that is. It's nothing.
Major histocompatibility molecules.
Alrighty. Living things are basically just vehicles for their genes. Genes play a necessary but not sufficient causal role in living things.
What does that mean?
What are we doing, Dembski? Like, this is okay. So this is where we have to just pause and acknowledge that what Dembski is doing here is a fundamentally dishonest thing, right? He is just strawmanning this for the benefit of his creationist audience. Like, that's what this is. Like, yeah,
you're a product of your genes. That's what those evolutionists say. You're just a product of your genes.
Yeah, no,
you can help what you are, So
our nucleotides.
I don't want to believe that. So I'm gonna take the other side, whatever the other side is.
I definitely didn't do a thing in class where I talked about quantitative genetics and put this big long equation on the board that had genetic components and non-genetic components that contribute to phenotype. But sure, let's just go with that.
You mean mathematics, Dembski's field?
Genes times environment? Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Organisms, while highly complex, are fundamentally no different from humanly constructed machines. Organisms are essentially different from humanly constructed machines.
Boy, is this a deck stack.
Zach,
and the correct
machines
one is
do not
A.
reproduce with inheritable mutations. B, machines tend to be more efficiently designed than organisms are, which has to deal with what they deal with. So my favorite example from recent genetics is the fact that literally all mammals that are toothless still retain the tooth enamel genes as pseudogenes knocking around the system, including baleen whales, which is like putting a gas tank on a Tesla. This is not good design.
I think this is one where the unambiguously correct answer is the creationist answer here. Like, living organisms are essentially different from humanly constructed machines. And let's start with the most important one. Organisms reproduce, machines don't.
Well, you haven't lived until you've seen my Honda Civic mating with the car next door.
Also, I just want to point this out. We're going to have a genetics fight about this at some point.
Are they living in one accord?
This will be. Here we go. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Should get all the geneticists together in a room and have a fight about that at some point. That'll be fun. All right. The concept. Oh, here we go. The concept of junk DNA was a major scientific blunder directly attributable to Darwinian thinking. Darwinian thinking advanced science by correctly characterizing non-coding DNA regions as junk DNA. Do you see what they did here?
Yes.
They did the thing that they get mad at me for saying they do, and they do it all the time.
Yeah.
You should, Dan, you've done this so much, do your thing. This is your bailiwick right here.
Like right now it is. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. What? It just, so
they're so happy that you're paying attention to them. It's given them cause to feel like, oh, somebody's paying attention. Now we can actually write a couple more articles. Yeah.
Discovery Institute.
You give them hope.
I'm going to keep paying attention.
Smarmy, pugnacious fellow that I am breaking down the entire list source by source that Luskin waved at you. And so far, out of over a dozen, my next episode will be on this Sunday, that he's got one out of the dozen that's kind of sort of supporting his position, but even there, it's not all the way. Oh, I don't think the rest of the stuff is going to go well for him.
Going to be real quick here. For those of you who don't know, I'm having a months-long fight with Discovery Institute about junk DNA. I had a debate with Dr. Casey Luskin back in May about junk DNA. And these statements are one of the things that I have pointed out repeatedly to Discovery Institute is they misrepresent both the history and the current state of the research on junk DNA. And this is a great example of that. Because let's just be clear, junk DNA is real. Evolution predicted junk DNA. Other biologists predicted very little junk DNA, and it turns out they were wrong. And so junk DNA, also non-functional DNA in the genome, was at no point in its history conceptually equivalent to non-protein coding DNA, because we knew about functional sequences that were non-protein coding prior to the term junk DNA appearing in the literature, right? So like Discovery Institute, stop lying about junk DNA. You're all bad at this. You're
in
all
some
bad
respects,
at this.
the whole heuristic here is the fact that junk DNA was so often put in quotation marks in papers who brought the subject up.
Yeah. We're going to move on. I'm going to bring my blood pressure down, talk about something that isn't junk DNA for a change. Darwin
You'll get it back up in a minute.
Darwin speculated that life began in a warm little pond. In this, as with so many of his ideas, he was remarkably prescient. Nobody today has any real insight into how life began. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to flip my desk. That'll probably cause me to disconnect.
Origins or bust. It's origins or bust. We had to have it in the list. He couldn't resist it.
Yeah. Here you go. This is False Dichotomy, the musical. Yes, that's exactly what this is. Turns out there's some other option, but between Darwin was absolutely correct and we know literally nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it is kind of remarkable that he go ahead, RJ.
Even if Jesus Christ explicitly created the first life 4 billion years ago, it won't make the reptile-mammal transition data go away.
No matter. Human beings are fundamentally different from all other animals, versus human beings are basically no different from other animals.
Here's the human exceptionalism card, and boy, he's not going to let it go.
Our brain cases are bigger. That's different. We have a lot of derived traits that are unique. It's different.
And a fun fact is that on the explicit details, none of the gang at the Discovery Institute, and to be fair, none of the gang in creationism are particularly good at delving into the little details of what actually is going on between us and the primates and the genetics and the developmental biology and the brain case sutures and all the rest. It's not an area that they deal with more than just tangentially in their apologetics.
Yeah. The only exception I can even think of to that is Gunter Beckley, who is I think an insect paleontologist.
Yeah.
So he tries to do that stuff. But other than that, the DI people just don't even touch
it. And spoiler alert, holy smokes, are there going to be some fun stuff about Beckley in volume 2 of The Rocks were there.
Joel, any thoughts?
Sorry, Dan. I'm just having trouble taking any of this seriously. I mean,
it's a mess, and it gets worse.
Simplistic, bad choices. You don't even know where to begin. You're right. This is just so ludicrous. It's only instructive in the sense of here's the mind, here's the rhetoric, right? Because this isn't meant to be serious. This is all about rhetoric, and as going all the way back to the beginning, what a commenter said before, this is the dog whistle. This is the message sent to creationists to help them continue to understand what evolutionists believe, which of course is not what they believe.
Yeah, it's so superficial.
Just reinforces one misconception after another.
I feel sorry for Dembski for putting up something so lame as this set of questions.
And yet, Joel, just one quick comment before we move to the next thing. You volunteered to be here with us to talk about this. Don't pretend you aren't enjoying this.
I really am not. I mean, this is torture. Because I would like to say something really witty, but I feel like all I can be is sarcastic. It's almost not worth dealing with the real issues here. Because for one thing, it would take a lot of time to actually delve into the basis of the misconception. So all you can kind of do is laugh some of these off. I mean, we can say they're wrong, and here's a basic reason why they're wrong.
All right. The most important
I mentioned before the show began to Dan what struck me, and so this is a spoiler alert for the remainder of the thing. You know what is never going to come up in any of these? Anything about the fossil record? Not a single question.
Weird. All right. The most important fact about human beings is our capacity for conscious reflection, reason, and language. Versus human mental capacities are a minor and superficial adaptation of an unexceptional primate.
Minor?
It's kind of a big deal.
What a superficial adaptation.
Yeah.
I gotta.
pure
No,
deck
it
stack.
is a big
Another
deal.
fun fact, because I'm measuring
will.
this in my work, the whole issue of language origin and cognitive science and all of that stuff is almost completely invisible in all of the anti-evolution literature and certainly in the intelligent design literature. They just flit past it at 900 miles an hour. And so to even bring this up is simply to remind us they don't ever think about this stuff. Not seriously.
Human beings can freely choose what to do versus free will is an illusion. I don't
Okay,
care.
who wants to fist fight with Jerry Coyne?
I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I just don't care.
And it's not a core concept of evolution. It's a sidebar. It's an interesting question, but it doesn't matter. And you can find evolutionists on both sides of the fence on here, and you could find theists on practically both sides of the fence on here if you look hard enough.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So it's, why is he bringing this up? Because it's a big bugbear for Dembski's conservative worldview.
This one, of all the ones that we've hit so far, this one might be my favorite. The capacity for mature love is one of the noblest aspects of human nature, versus humans experience love as the result of oxytocin and other hormones coursing through the body, just as for other mammals.
Duh.
Literally the second thing. Literally the second thing.
Yeah. Doesn't mean it's not powerful and emotive. This whole issue, another area that kind of relates to this is our fascination for music and our love of the arts. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on that has grounding in our neuroscience.
Also, I just want to point one
small
thing out here that a couple people in the chat have latched onto. Mature love?
Mature love.
They mean not sexual is what that means, because again, Christian fundamentalists, and that's not okay unless you're making kids, right? It's not okay to enjoy it, right? If you're enjoying it, it's not allowed. All right, that's what that means. That's one of the dog whistles, right? It's going back to that one earlier of family structure, right? That's what they mean by mature love there. And also, I literally did this in class today. Like literally today, I talked about this. You can put people in an MRI machine, and somebody who has a new, relatively new, weeks to a couple of months, new romantic partner, and put that brain in an MRI machine, and it's indistinguishable from someone who just like snorted cocaine. Like it's the exact same pathway. Like when you fall in love, you are literally addicted.
It's long been known that the brain systems that light up in religious ecstasy are the same ones that light up in sexual arousal. The next question is going to cause Zach to blow a gasket.
Oh, here we go. All right. Referring to kin selection, JBS Haldane remarked, "I would gladly lay down my life for 2 brothers or 8 cousins. This principle helps us understand the nature of human altruism. Mother Teresa, who ministered to dying homeless people in Calcutta, and Holocaust rescuers who risked their lives to help Jews escape Nazi death camps, have more to teach us about human altruism than kin selection."
May I point out?
I don't want to blow out anyone's speakers, so I'll let let's start with Joel. Joel, do you have anything to say to this one? No,
I got nothing to say about this.
What the hell, man? Like, what are we doing here? Both of these, yes, because here's the thing, and I apologize for all the rants in this one, but here's the thing, folks. It can simultaneously be the case that a trait is the result of evolutionary history and evolutionary processes, and also, there's this thing that exists called society that also affects how we interact with each other and the decisions that we make. And both of those things can be true. And this framing is stupid and dishonest.
Plus, there is a huge literature on the origins of altruism in biology, going back to things that don't even have a nervous system, like bacteria and fungi. And then you have a secondary altruism that comes in with the fact that we have a linguistic thing that ups the ante in terms of reputation and all of that. And again, this is a huge literature that is virtually invisible in the anti-evolution context, and certainly invisible at the Discovery Institute. So they're just kind of floating around with their little dogma world, completely independent of what any of the material is, and they just turned it into this little cartoon.
Yeah. For anyone who wants to go into the real kind of the evolution of altruism, Google Hamilton's rule, and that'll take you down take you down the pathway.
God, there's new papers popping downstream like every week on it.
Fantastic. It's a really interesting field.
Yeah.
Some things, like killing innocents, are absolutely wrong. Nothing is right or wrong except in relation to its consequences, especially for one's genes.
Not about Darwinism.
I'm trying not to get demonetized over here.
Yeah. This is pure culture camp, pure their obsessions about human exceptionalism and ethics and philosophy, which are perfectly fine little issues, but it's not a thing about gene frequency and the like that relates to evolutionary things per se. And
rape is morally wrong because it treats an autonomous human person as an object. Rape is properly viewed as an adaptation in oral hominid males to help them spread their genes. Yeah, rape is wrong. I don't know why this is hard. Why are we like the level of dishonesty to be like, this is a thing evolutionists believe, that rape is okay. Like Dembski, you're such a hack.
There was a thing that Cosmides and that group with rape as an adaptation, which is like 20, 30 years ago, that caused a big kerfuffle back and forth. That was an obsession with them, and it stayed an obsession at Dembski's Uncommon Descent, O'Leary's posts. She would go on and on and on about this stuff. Yeah. And so this is a thing that's just been sticking like a little burr under their bonnet that ain't ever going to go away, even though it's become as antiquated a notion as talking about fax machines and VHS tapes.
And a lot of it comes from I'm going to be generous and call it the field of evolutionary psychology. And dumpster fire, absolute trash heap dumpster fire is what evolutionary psychology is. And I can't. And
agree to that.
Jerry Coyne rails on it quite a lot. So, this is not even an evolution versus non-evolution issue.
Don't get me started about evolutionary psychology.
Wait till you get to the next question.
Oh, if scientists could crossbreed a human and chimpanzee to form a hybrid human Z, it would be a triumph and cause for celebration. Hybridizing a human being with a chimpanzee or any other animal is likely to be biologically impossible, and in any case would be a moral outrage. Why are we even again, this is propaganda for a creationist audience.
This is the first one I put on my list under the what category, because this is a thing, there was some stuff that circulates largely in creationist apologetics about supposedly there was an attempt done in Stalin's time, and it's like one of the little threadbare sidebars that occasionally pops into the intelligent design thing. This brings to mind the possibility Dembski has a weird connection to young earth creationism in the fact that I know that some of his stuff, he reads wackaloon creationist stuff that will once in a while will pop up as a reference to his thing. So he's not completely oblivious to this material. He doesn't typically allude to it. I think this is one of these illusions.
Okay.
I'll say something here, since you two know your DI stuff a lot better than I do, a lot deeper than I do. So, this is you're actually illustrating to me why I don't pay attention to this stuff. All right. I mean, now I'm realizing why I haven't really cared too much about the and so I'm not as familiar. But with respect to this one, I will say that what this interest in asking this question about a human Z, this does come from the young earth creationist type of thing, because it goes to the barometologic question, right? They feel like, if they could show that you could do a hybrid between humans and chimpanzees, well, what is their definition of a kind? It's often it comes down to reproducibility, right? Or compatibility. And so this is where you get the idea that, well, if they could show that there is compatibility, then yes, there'd be a celebration, because we would have just discounted all of creationism, as if evolutionary biologists and primatologists are sitting around worried about what young earth creationists think, and are trying to show that they're wrong, right? There's no one that has an interest in developing and doing this kind of study, doing this kind of experiment in order to destroy creationism.
And yet Dembski,
but this is the perception. This is the perception that Dembski here is trying to create, is that this is what evolutionists are thinking, is like this would be the final axe. This would be the final nail that we could drive into the young earth creationist coffin if we could just finish off this research and show that humans and chimpanzees aren't that different and are compatible.
Whereas your regular biologists are going, no, this is really unlikely to be workable, kids.
Yeah.
I just want to say, for all of the smack we've been talking about Dembski and Discovery Institute and intelligent design for the last hour, Joel just dropped the sickest burn yet, which is that it is not worth his time to pay attention to them. That is
and you are not wrong to do so,
the
Joel.
coolest cut is Joel Duff doesn't think you, as a creationist, are worth paying attention to. That is just a sorry.
Well, remember, there's only about a dozen active anti-evolutionists at the Discovery Institute. If you look at their entire heavy guns are their posters at Discovery Institute, whereas the creation science movement is many times bigger in terms of the number of PhDs they have and the number of like even biocomplexity, the one and only moribund little thing, as opposed to you got half a dozen creationist journals that are still active. So,
DI just has some deep pockets behind it, and that allows them to have a larger footprint than it looks.
Yeah,
and Dan, somebody out there does have to pay attention to them. I'm not saying that just because I feel like I don't need to doesn't mean that nobody should.
Yeah.
Do
you know Steve Meyer pulls down
because of the money, because of the they do have a large following among the general public, like many young Earth creations and so forth. They scoop a lot of this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to pay attention.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have to.
I'm just not the one to do it.
Yeah. Do you realize that Steve Myers pulls down 150 grand a year as head of the Discovery Institute? Nice work if you can get it.
I'm in the wrong profession. I mean, they should hire me to run their research institute. I will do a better job than whoever it is that they have running it now, because they're not doing anything right now.
That human chimpanzee hybrid would do a better job.
But RJ, we're in it for the money, remember? I mean,
absolutely. Where is my shill check? I should be getting them on a steady basis.
The establishment over here. Yeah, from
get my Dawkins checks. It works, kids.
Let's move on.
All right. We got to finish. 29. Goodness, truth, and beauty are illusions that helped our hominid ancestors survive. Goodness, truth, and beauty are objectively real norms that guide human belief and action. Lumping in truth and beauty into there is a choice.
Yeah. There are PhDs that would study all the little nuances of all of this stuff. You ain't going to get any of that at the Discovery Institute.
I hope nobody read that one when I just scrolled to it, because this one is just, all right, let's do it.
Objectively real.
Here we go.
Now we get the giant what question?
What the motivations of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice cannot be understood at the deepest level without knowledge of evolutionary theory. Jane Austen had no need of evolutionary theory to understand human motivations at the deepest level relevant to literature.
When I read this, I went, what? Because not only had I never heard of it as an example, and I've been following intelligent design stuff and various stuff, I could easily imagine there is some niche little evolutionary psychologist who wrote a little dissertation on Pride and Prejudice. Maybe I tried to Google something on it. I couldn't find anything. And that somebody at the Discovery Institute might have gone at it. I couldn't find anything on that. So I only have to ask, where the hell is Dembski getting this from?
I only know one thing. Maybe this is true, but I don't think it's true for Pride and Prejudice and zombies, because truly you cannot understand Pride and Prejudice with zombies with evolutionary theory either. You really do have to just understand zombies.
Yeah.
Great movie, Mike. Great movie, by the way. You got to watch that.
Yeah, just like I am still wondering about whether or not hobbits have ALUs.
That's a good question. You heard it here, folks. Nobody could write books before 1859. Yeah. This is
not good books anyway.
Yeah. This is why I created the duh category, the what category, because it was so distantly removed even from standard culture camp obsessions that I'm wondering, what?
This is Poe's Law territory. Like, this is where you would be like, if someone showed this to you blind, this is the point where you would be like, this is a joke. This is a
Yeah.
parody of what a
And
creationist
yet
would
he
do.
is serious about this.
We
I think Dembski is always serious.
we have well and truly jumped the shark, folks, and yet there are
Yeah.
still 92 of you here watching us on this ride.
Yeah. Now we get to the Richard
right.
Dawkins hate club.
All right, yeah, this is
section.
a bunch of the rest of this is all Dawkins. So memes are the unit
Yeah.
of selection of human culture, much as genes are the unit of selection of organismic traits, versus meme theory is a crude caricature of the way human beings come up with new ideas and share them with one another.
Meme theory is not actually a thing yet. It's a curious idea. That's at most. But I guess Dembski's brain is stuck in 1985.
There are useful analogies between memes and biological inheritance and recombination and concepts like that.
Sure.
Could you like mathematically describe memes in the same way that you could do population genetics? Like, no, doesn't work that way, folks. It's not. It just, I don't know, man. Why are we talking about memes?
He's
aren't
putting
most of these
this as
questions
one of
memes?
his 40 important questions, as though there are giant fistfight camps going on as to memes in the evolutionary community. That Eugene Koonin is manning the barricades compared to Jerry Coyne. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, all right. Richard Dawkins is a distinguished scientist who deserves a Nobel Prize. Richard Dawkins is a brilliant popularizer who has not done any original scientific work in decades. Look.
Both?
When they're right, okay? Look, credit where it's due.
Credit's due, yes.
You got one, Bill.
You think somebody needs to get Dembski a little Richard Dawkins plush toy so that he can have it on his mantelpiece next to the elf on the shelf in Christmas time?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one just in terms of like, you know what? Here's what I'll say for Dawkins, that selfish gene is a useful theoretical framework in a lot of contexts. That's from the 1970s, and it's true that he hasn't done any original work in decades, right? So like, yes, he made a very important contribution to our understanding of evolutionary biology, I think. That was a long time ago, and now he's mostly just a jerk to trans people on the internet. So like, screw that guy.
In my own case, in my own intellectual development, I have to say I'm much more of a Stephen Jay Gouldian than I ever was a Dawkins son.
Cheers to that. Yeah, and he also didn't actually come up with the idea. George C. Williams just
Thank you, Zach.
Popularizer again. Emphasis on popularizer, right? Hey, Bill, when you're right, you're right.
And we know nobody at the Discovery Institute operates as a popularizer.
Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist versus the atheist worldview still contains major conceptual gaps. For those of you who are unaware, that is a Dawkins quote. That is a Dawkins quote,
well,
right?
Again, from like the 1990s or so. I mean, it's an old one, and it gets, oh my God, it gets retread obsessively. More so in the intelligent design movement, even than in young Earth creationists.
Yeah, the atheist worldview still contains major conceptual gaps.
Such as?
Hang on.
Footnote needed.
Get out my list of reasons how much I don't care. Let me just scroll through my list here.
Yeah.
Like, what this has nothing to do with evolutionary theory. Nothing.
Absolutely.
Religion
but we're not talking about evolutionary theory. We're talking about Darwinism.
Now
it's the Darwinism detector.
34 is so important. At last, the shoe drops.
Yeah, religion is a legitimate activity in which humans try to understand and make contact with what is ultimately real, versus religion is an irrational response to unknown causes operating in nature. As we understand nature better, religion will disappear. Hang on, I'm going to run and find a fedora real fast, and then I can pick number 2.
Jackson Wheat and I plan to do what may turn into a 3-volume work on the origin and structure and social dynamics of evolution and religion, and why it's very natural for us to do religion and the cognitive systems that are involved in it, independent of the truth or falsity of the religion aspects. We do it in the same way we do sex and music. These are just natural things for us to do. And the fact that Dembski is putting it in this frame, when by the way, he comes from a particularly narrow conservative branch of Christianity, which is a subset of the religion arguments and all of that. And yet he's painting it. Well, his audience is going to know exactly what he means. His religion, they're the ones they share, and nobody else gets to. Hindus, forget them.
Yeah. I just want to comment briefly. No, absolutely not, because that's like, who do you think I am? Some like new atheist edgelord from 2005? Like, no, absolutely not.
I have a Henry Higgins style hat, so there.
I think that was an excellent answer. So we're going to number 35. Due to our oh my goodness, due to our uncontrolled population growth, human beings have become a scourge upon Earth, not unlike cancer. Versus human beings are the crown of creation. Like,
this again is another culture camp obsession of that, because remember the anti-evolution movement, with very few exceptions, comes from the very right wing of philosophy. Literally, William Jennings Bryan exhausts the list of left-wing Bernie Sanders style anti-evolutionists. That's it, and that's 100 years ago. So their obsessions about Paul Ehrlich and population growth issues and environmentalism, we're not even getting an explicit question on that. We're getting a distilled hitchhiker question, which lends in this. And this is telling us so much about how Dembski's mind is working and the worldview he comes from.
This is also a dog whistle to the people who are obsessed with birth rates in the United States, and specifically the birth rates among certain demographic groups relative to other demographic groups.
And even in vitro fertilization, as is right now issue.
And let me be clear what I'm talking about. This is a dog whistle to racists who think white people aren't having enough babies and brown people are having too many. That's what this is with I would call it great replacement conspiracy theory, because that's fundamentally what it is. It's a racist conspiracy theory. So like, that's what this is a shout out to. This is an allusion to that side of things. And again, this is like one thing, for all the problems with this, one thing that Dembski, we can say about Dembski here is that he is extremely deliberate about the phrases he uses. And this is a shout out.
He picks his dog whistles very carefully.
He's very efficient at it. Third world economic development is likely to relieve Third world economic development to relieve poverty is more important than preserving biological diversity at all costs. Preserving biological diversity is more important than third world economic development.
Here we are knee deep in the metaphysic of the Discovery Institute, because they started out that, believe it or not, anti-evolutionism is a sidebar in the Discovery Institute worldview. It's founded by a guy that ran for governor of the state of Washington and failed, a conservative Republican. Michael Behe first showed up on the Discovery Institute website back in the 90s, and it's gone. The post has disappeared long ago. He was advocating about privatizing Social Security. That was the thing that he was interested in. And so this is a very conservative, pro-business, anti-environmentalist worldview going back for a long time, of which this question is, again, one of the little tips of the iceberg things that if you didn't know that broader scheme of things of the Discovery Institute conservative worldview over in there, you would go, wow.
The tell here is that as our friend Jackson Wheat pointed out just today, he pointed this out to us, that Discovery Institute is on the advisory board for Project 2025. And if you haven't heard of Project 2025, Google it. It's basically the Trump 2.0 plan to institute Christian nationalism, and Discovery Institute is on the advisory board.
Download the 2023. I did, in fact, because of this issue coming up. I downloaded the 2023 main text of this, and then to get their current list of advisory boards, you got to go to their website, and I made a copy of that. It is a who's who of culture camp, conservative, anti-environmentalist, anti-abortion, culture warrior ones, ranging from Jay Sekulow's ACLJ over to Tony Perkins's bunch and the Discovery Institute, even though some of them are full-out young earth creationist groups and all Trumpista supporters. I'll point out, just as a demographic detail, I know of only one Discovery Institute orbit person who has come out as not for Trump. And that is, ironically, the young Earth creationist, one of the young Earth creationists among them, John Mark Reynolds. He's one of the few. Oh, he's from a Greek Orthodox Church background, and he does not like Donald Trump at all. But that stands out as a gigantic outlier
Seriously.
on there. Yeah.
All right. We have 4 more. We're going to do this
Yeah.
fast before
We're at
Joel
the dregs. We're
breaks
at the
his
dregs,
computer on
kid.
purpose.
Yeah, before I fall asleep here, because this is just
I
didn't read down this far. Apparently,
Oh, man.
these are just so ridiculous.
I love Joel here playing the straight man, just not having any of this.
We did this to shock. Oh.
All right. Purpose,
I'm
value, and meaning are folk psychology categories that do not correspond to anything in reality. Purpose, value, and meaning are objectively real. All this
Objectively
philosophy
real.
nonsense. What do you think, Joel?
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what
you're
I
breaking
think.
up a little bit there. If we're on 36,
Joel's like,
third world economic development.
my computer's got to update again.
Yeah.
Remember, folks, this quiz is evaluating your devotion to Darwinism. Ask yourself what any of this has to do with Darwinism. Anything you can see on screen right now. What does this have to do with Darwinism? I also actually just want to say, going back to 36 briefly, it's not an either or when it comes to ending poverty. It's not an either or. We can do both
exactly.
things.
And one could argue that the kind of economic growth that one comes in by moving to a green economic environment is a jump starter for innovative development.
Go.
Even Texas, most of their big chunk of their energy is now coming from renewables.
Darwinian evolutionary theory has weaknesses, and those who point them out should be tolerated, if not applauded, versus Darwinian evolutionary theory has no weaknesses, and those who say it does are usually religiously motivated.
Give me a break. Because again, given how few anti-evolutionists historically and currently are not highly religiously motivated and are coming from a very structured religious worldview, this is just gobsmackingly disingenuous, and gobsmackingly disingenuous given the worldview that Dembski represents.
Darwinian evolutionary theory is from 1859. Or, if we want to be go to the other end, 1880-ish, right? There are no Darwinian evolutionary biologists anymore. This is not a real thing.
Well, you mean we're still not arguing about gemules?
I mean, look, if he wanted to at least do this in something resembling an honest way, what he would say is that, evolutionary theory in the 21st century has weaknesses, and those who point them out, blah, 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 right? That would be the at least honest way to ask this question.
We're not even doing that.
But again, we're not even trying, right? We're not even trying.
Footnotes needed.
Right. And also, just that last bit, those who say it does have weaknesses are usually religiously motivated. Yes, almost without exception. Yes.
Oh yeah, I encountered a lot of that. It is an instantaneous measure of the intelligent design movement that, by and large, their presentations are in churches or deeply conservative religious colleges. I know this as an observational fact. And when I bumped into dear little Casey Luskin in 2013, it was at a speech that he was giving at a local church in Seattle, and it was free. So whoop, I pounced, because most of the time they charge for these damn things.
Intelligent design, as a voice of dissent, does useful work in keeping the evolutionary biology community honest. Versus intelligent design has no intellectual merits and deserves no public hearing. Don't threaten me with a good time, Bill. Don't do it.
Self-serving.
Oh, it's the hubris of it. Like anybody's paying attention. I know there's an awful lot of people in relation directly to Bill Dembski, his riffing off of the no free lunch theorem. That the actual authors of the no free lunch theorem, one of whom pounced on Dembski to say, you don't understand this theory, you idiot. Whereas the other one deliberately did not want to get involved in the debate because he didn't want to get connected up with a whole discussion about creation, evolution kind of issues. And a vast majority of the scientific community are ones who don't give the slightest attention. They may not even realize there is a Discovery Institute, let alone what their challenges to Darwinism are.
Let's see what number 40 is. All right, here we
The
go.
last one. Oh,
Oh,
yes. Well,
there you
here we
go.
go after Daniel Dennett, who just recently died. So we had to put him in.
The theory of natural selection is a universal acid that dissolves every problem in the biological and social sciences. Darwinian theory explains virtually everything. Versus a theory that explains everything explains nothing. For all practical purposes, Darwinian theory is unfalsifiable, and so is essentially unscientific. Joel,
Deck anyone?
I'm gonna throw it to Joel first, and we'll work our way up the
Take
panel
it, Joel.
here. Joel, what do you got for number 40?
Well, I mean, how much have we talked about the social sciences? And here we're just immediately going to it. It explains everything in biological and social sciences. So by lumping those two together, how do you choose that answer? I can't.
Of course not. It's ridiculous.
But
It doesn't even
the
explain
worldview
everything
of
in
the audience
biological
he's
science.
appealing to have no problem with it. They go, yeah, see, universal acid, boo, Daniel Dennett, boo.
I just learn. I've asked this of
Doesn't even mention
creationists a
Daniel
lot.
Dennett's name. That's even snarkier.
I've asked this question of creationists a lot, and I find myself on number 40 of this exercise asking it one more time. Creationists, if you're going to talk about biology, pick something about evolution and learn it.
Ooh,
first.
Zach had a great comment. Put that up. That's not about Dennett meant.
Oh, here you go. I got it. That's not what Dennett meant by universal acid, but also I disagree that NS is saying, yeah, natural selection doesn't explain everything. Like this is crystal clear that natural selection does not explain everything. It's just this is dumb. Oh, we got a cyber chat. Look at that. If cyberbullying creationists was an Olympic sport, who among team science would take gold, silver, and bronze? It depends. You know, how are we defining team science? But I mean, you've got
Erica deserves a great big award.
Definitely. Erica Gutsick Gibbon is doing the Lord's work over there. There's a lot of good people doing this stuff. It's become a very crowded field, which is fantastic because it's necessary. So
and people with actual creds. I mean, you're an actual a biology professor, and so thing with Joel. I am just a lowly schmoo over in Spokane with a history degree.
Yeah, I mean, we've got PZ Myers right here. He's been doing this for how long? I mean, I remember when I was an undergraduate reading his blog back in the day. You've got, you got Aaron Rye. You've got, it's not his main shtick, but I think we all can appreciate Professor Dave's Discovery Institute series. That was
That's a temper, but he does have a lot of facts.
It's a crowded field, and I appreciate everybody who's doing their part to push back on all of this nonsense.
And if I may say, despite the occasional indigestion, it's damned fun.
So folks, we have made it to the end, so we can remove that from our screen and with any luck from our memory, and let us never.
Well, I'm going to be alluding to this in the new book. So
PZ's here. PZ, thank you for joining us, PZ. I appreciate it. It's great to see you. 40 years makes me feel old already. 40 years.
I bumped into him at a talk about
business. That's a job well done.
Now.
Forest is great.
Oh,
there's a lot of people doing this stuff. We've spent an hour and a half talking about this, which is longer than I intended, but such is life. That is the nature of these things. We tend to talk. We just, for at least a brief moment there, had for some reason 100 people watching this. I thank you. I don't know why you're all here, but thank you. So what I want to do first before we wrap this up is turn it over to RJ and then to Joel. Tell us what you have going on. Tell us what you have coming up. And then I'll wrap this up.
Jackson and I are hot at work on the second volume of The Rocks Were There, which if you like volume 1, volume 2 is going to be even better. And it covers a whole slew of stuff. I was just adding material in on some more living fossil material. It's at the tail end of his chapter 5. I'm doing the cosmology chapter and material on flood legends and all of that stuff. And there's going to be material on human evolution. There's going to be a big section on the creationist obsessions with eugenics and Darwinian racism and all that kind of stuff. So all of that's going to be popping in there as well. And of course, I do my Evolution Hour show in the wee hours of the morning on Sundays, where if you like what you see, there's a Patreon for that. I put the links to all the books, including my novels, in there as well, and I'm keeping active on that front. We're living in a golden age of information, and therefore nobody has any good excuse for being as wrong as some people oh so clearly are. And so I'm having a delightful time of it, and I'll keep at it as long as I bloody well can.
There you go.
There.
Joel, what are you up to? What do you have coming
What
up?
am I up to? Right now, I'm feeling like a wallflower, standing here just nodding and grinning. Because honestly, I'm stunned.
What you were
I am. I'm just like I don't even know where to begin on some of these things, and I don't think well on my quick on my feet. You two are a font of information with respect to what's going on with DI, and so I've enjoyed listening to that. But you've also made me recognize that. Yeah, I'm intensely frustrated because as a theist myself, I'm really upset with how DI is representing Christianity and theist by being so obsequious about these things. And so I think that is really what's getting to me more than just like factually wrong about things. And so my response to that is not something that I can like make a really fast quip about. It's something I really need to sit and think and
cogitate on it. Cogitate
on, right? So so this format is not very comfortable. So what do I have going on? Well, I'll go back to my forte, which is more looking at young Earth creationist material, which I know very well, and understanding their particular worldview much better than I do the Discovery Institute worldview. And trying to provide my perspective on that.
Joel, because you keep your finger on the pulse of AIG and CMI and all the little ins and outs of things, and perceiving the bits about new creationism and that boy, that's saving scholars like me a heck of a lot of time of being able to then come in and take a look at all of that stuff, because it's a giant field to deal with, much bigger than the intelligent design field.
Yeah. So before I wrap this up, I just want to once again remind everybody here, all approximately 100 of you, subscribe to RJ. What you're going to get there is endless going back in time through this is where this claim come from. The evolutionary history, if you will, of every creationist claim in the book. You're going to get that from RJ, right down to the citations from like the obscure paper from like 1966 that was the genesis of this one weird idea that we still deal with. Go subscribe to Joel. What RJ said, Joel is keeping up with all the goings on, particularly among the young Earth creationists, AIG, CMI, ICR, all the new creationists, the Is Genesis History people, all these different groups and how they're separate and the beefs they have and how they meld together sometimes, and just what they're up to as ministries, as well as on the scientific side. And I will say, personally, one of my instant watch every time it pops up in my feed is This Week in Creationism. Every one of them, I devour that series every time it pops up. So can't recommend it enough. Everybody needs to subscribe to both of my guests immediately. So for me, the thing that I want to leave everybody with, as we just looked through this monstrosity from Bill Dembski, is just like how incredibly dishonest this whole thing was, right? There was no effort here at a good faith, like, do you understand evolution? Do you agree with evolution, or do you not? That's not what this was. This is top to bottom propaganda, straw manning evolution for a creationist audience, right? It's fundamentally about misinforming and misleading people. And I think, as we talked about earlier, specifically to keep people in the silo, right? That's what we're looking at here. And I think that is emblematic of what creationism is, because if I beat this drum all the time, and I've been beating it more and more lately, is that this is first and foremost a political project, not a scientific project. And
Yeah.
what Discovery Institute is doing as a political project is not fundamentally different from like what Answers in Genesis is doing. They're coming at it from very different ways, right?
Yes.
AIG is very upfront about where they're coming from, whereas Discovery Institute is fundamentally dishonest about where they're coming from, but they are ultimately pulling in the same direction, right? And that's something that we need to recognize and deal with. So that all being said, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please, subscribe to RJ, subscribe to Joel, subscribe to me if you aren't already. Hit like, leave comment, share, do all of the algorithm friendly things. And I'll just tell everybody that next week, same bat time, same bat channel, we have a really fun show planned. Me and some guests, we are going to go through creationist arguments, and we are going to fix them. We are going to do Yek better than the Yeks. We're going to show them the arguments that they should be using if they wanted to use less bad arguments. And that's going to be super fun. So that's going to be next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at this channel. I'll have links, circulating for that pretty soon. So thank you everybody for watching. I hope you all have a great night, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.